All right, welcome back to the Wall Street Shuffle. It's nice to have you guys on board. We would tell you to go sign up for our Listener Appreciation Night, but it is too late, and besides, every seat is full. We are looking forward to it. In about another 2 hours, we'll be over there along with all of our guests, and we hope you'll have a great time with us. You can head out to the website, thewallstreetshuffle.com, and sign up for our newsletter, The Peak Lifestyle, and you can call us today, 877-326-3255. My guest right now is Mr. Zuhdi Jasser, and he is founder and president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy and author of the book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim patriot's fight to save his faith. Zuhdi, how are you, my friend?
Great. It's nice to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's nice to have you on. All right. Let me first let you describe for the listeners which side of the fence you come down on Islam. Is it a misunderstood religion? Are they radical extremists? From which side do you come?
Well, I come from the fact of a realist, a Muslim who loves my faith, but yet realizes that we got some major problems we need to deal with, that there's my Islam, that my family came to America able to celebrate our faith here more than we could in any so-called Muslim countries. But then there's other versions of Islam, and I'm not in denial. I don't give people apologetics as far as saying that, well, these are just criminals. I come down on the American side that says that basically there's the American narrative that defeated theocracy and formed our wonderful country under a constitution that has a separation of church and state. And I realize that Muslims need to go through that same reform, through that same enlightenment, and we need to separate mosque and state. And really, that's the root cause of radicalization and terrorism globally. It's not a violence problem, it's not a crime problem, but it's a problem of a difference of the lens through which we see society as through liberty or through theocracy.
Is it fair when you hear Americans say, where are the moderate Muslims? And we keep saying, why aren't the moderate Muslims joining the fight against the radical Muslims that do exist? You and I both know they exist. Well, you just said they exist. Why are the moderate Muslims not joining in like moderate Catholics would, like moderate Jews would, like moderate anybody would if there were a radical component of their religion?
Well, in my book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam, I go through a lot of the reasons I think that exist, from issues of tribalism and a sense of a lack of understanding of Western society to a problem in leadership. Many of our leadership of our organizations that claim to speak for our faith community are really part of the problem, in that they don't want to recognize the connection, the direct link between political Islam, which is a mixture of politics and religion, and the sense of the Islamic State with militancy, and they don't want to address that. So instead, they blame America, they blame the West, and we have a crisis in leadership, and that's why the silent majority of Muslims, I think, who came here to escape that have not been stepping up, really, and are looking for platforms to do that. And in the book, I talk about various organizations that Americans should look to rather than what I feel is the lowest hanging fruit of a lot of these Islamic groups like the Council on American Islamic Relations or the Islamic Society of North America that came out of that Muslim Brotherhood mentality in the Middle East. Yeah. That has been so much of the problem.
So help us out with that, without talking about everything you cover in the book. Help us with some organizations that would be helpful to the problems with radical Islam.
We formed a coalition called the American Islamic Leadership Coalition that includes now over 20 Muslim journalists, authors, leaders of organizations, not only mine, but the American Islamic Congress in Canada, the Muslim Canadian Congress. These are reformers, and I think Americans should understand that Islam is going through this convulsions, if you will, of division between reformers and revivalists, those that don't really want to change but want to sort of put new packaging around the same old dressing and don't want to separate the spiritual from the political. And our American Islamic Leadership Coalition, and people can go to our website at americanislamicleadership.org to learn about organizations that are now really emerging as, I think, the new face of American Islam.
So how does America defend itself without further isolating moderate Islam? That's the toughest part, because the narrative is easy for the Muslim Brotherhood and the radical Muslims out there to say, look, America is against all of Islam. So how do we be properly aggressive with our enemies without alienating moderate Islam?
that is the most important question, and I think people will answer when reading the book, and that they'll realize that we have lost the skills of our founding fathers in discussing religion publicly, and we shouldn't allow political correctness to make us frightened from dealing with this polarity in America where one side says no Muslim could do wrong and the other side says every Muslim is a possible terrorist. And at the end of the day, the American narrative that we are living together, every faith has equal access to government as long as we are not, we're a government based in reason, based in natural law, under a constitution that has an establishment clause, that is what brings us together. And actually, if you look in Europe, they have a much bigger problem with radical Islam because they don't have that same immigrant narrative that so much celebrates religious freedom like the United States Constitution does versus European nationalism that is almost anti-religious at times. And that's really the solution to engage our Muslim friends, both domestically and abroad.
What do we do with misguided politicians in Europe, in Asia, in the U.S. that are grossly empathetic with the far left radical Muslims, and they do everything from embracing Sharia law to saying it's all our fault, the terrorism, they're only reacting to terrible things we've done in the past. These politicians, Democrats, Republicans, across the globe, there's plenty of them, and there's enough of them to have an influence. What do we do with folks that want to blame America first?
I think we need to have a bigger, more direct public conversation with them that, listen, this is not against Muslims or Islam. We're not looking to convert. You know, I as a Muslim love my faith. You can't convert a quarter of the world's population, and I think it's a vehicle for a solution, actually. But for the left, we need to tell them, listen, there's a reason why these 57 countries that form the Organization of Islamic Cooperation are leaders and dictators and autocrats of some of the worst societies as far as women's rights, gay rights, all the things that the left supposedly cherishes here in the West are destroyed under Islamic theocratic leadership in Iran or Saudi Arabia or elsewhere. So they need to become consistent with their own values on the left, and that this is a nonpartisan issue or bipartisan, that we should look to develop a consensus in America, no different than we did against communism, where we all realized that we didn't want to take away the rights of the Communist Party to exist, but nobody was under the illusion that communism was a solution for America when we were fighting the Soviets. Same thing with Islamism. We don't have to embrace the Brotherhood or Islamism in order to understand that they will not be a solution to liberty in the Middle East.
What's your since we're starting on this subject? What's your opinion of the so-called Arab Spring? Although most people, I think, now are talking about it being an Arab winter, is that it's not, in my humble opinion, it's not a democratic movement. It's not anything other than a takeover by radical Muslims in the Middle East. Am I off base on that?
A little bit. I mean, I tell you what I see it. I mean, my family was persecuted in Syria, and the government there is one of the worst in the world, and you see them shooting their people in the streets. You know, it's an Arab awakening. They're going through convulsions and trying to shed off the yoke of dictatorship. This radical Islam that you're seeing now start to take some more root as the alternative to secular dictatorship was created under these dictatorships. The ideology certainly is coming from a medieval interpretation of Islam. But if we're going to win the battle of ideas, this battle within the House of Islam against political Islam, you're not going to do it by pushing it underground. Islamism thrives underground. So we have to engage them in the public place. And the spring in Egypt and Tunisia was actually labor, was actually, regular citizens that weren't making any money that were being oppressed. But now it's been hijacked by organized movements, the Islamists per se, in Syria and in Egypt and Tunisia. And if we're going to win this, we have to start getting involved, not militarily, but intellectually, and no longer just throw cash at them, but help them build the infrastructure of liberty that has helped the West succeed.
You and your friends and members of the AILC, let me ask you this. What type of hostility, what type of threats, what type of environment are you facing right now when you're trying to be the voice for at least the majority of Muslims? What are you getting back from the far left side?
Well, we're in some days it's exponential growth, and in other days it's crickets, very little. And I think it's because Americans, for some reason, we have this hyper-secularism we've had where we religion becomes the third rail, and once somebody puts on a cloak of faith. Nobody wants to engage them, and this has been the most difficult thing. And I think ultimately, many of us get, and I talk in the book about the pushback I got locally here in Arizona and then nationally and now globally from Islamic groups that don't want to deal with the substance of our arguments, but rather want to attack us as Uncle Toms and tools of some conspiracy, etc. And I think that speaks to how we're in the right direction, how we must be actually hitting them in the core of where we can win the battle of ideas. And they don't want to deal with it, so instead they call us names. And I recently had a threat from an al-Qaeda group in the Middle East that was trying to get the Syrian opposition to be radical Islamists, and they told the moderate opposition in Syria, don't deal with Zuhdi, Jasser in America, etc., because he is on the wrong side. And they did this in Arabic and basically threatened me physically. And you realize that you're in the right place, that I must be headed in the right direction, because they're very threatened with the monopoly they've had on leadership in the Muslim community.
As far as Americans reading the Quran, that's probably not going to happen because most Americans have never read the Bible. You'd think they'd start with that. So the idea of somebody saying, well, just go read the Quran and you'll understand that that Islamic religion is not a violent religion. There's got to be a way that Islamists can convey to the rest of the world what their religion is all about. It's almost like I need a cliff note for the Quran. How in the world do we get to know the Quran better? How do you educate those of us that are Americans? Forget about educating the far left side of the radical Muslims. Don't you think there'd be a benefit to educating America on what the Quran really says?
Absolutely, and that's why one of the last primary chapters in my book is about how the Quran is misinterpreted, and I talk about some of the passages. And, actually you'd find in my response initially, if you read a lot of the English translations out there that come from the radical Saudi Islamist movement, you'll find that they're pretty hateful in some of their interpretations of what they think God says in the Quran. But, that's why we need also some moderate interpretations. But I would tell people, and I think if you want to have hope in this struggle, I think is the most important threat in the 21st century, which is political Islam, not terrorism, but actually political Islam. If we want to defeat that, we need to find Muslims to lead this that are reformers, and Muslims that, listen, I mentioned in the book that 99% of who I am as a Muslim, my character, my morality, my compassion, my humility, I learned early on in my life, long before I could do scriptural exegesis as a Muslim and read the Arabic and understand it. And I think it's no different for Jews and Christians and others. Who we are in our Judeo-Christian tradition is no different. And ultimately, we learn early on from our parents. And I think it's true for most Americans. If you want to, talk to Muslims about their values, talk to them about whether they seek an Islamic state for dominance or if they love America versus, as a secular nation that separates church or mosque and state. And I think that'll be so much more valuable than trying to believe it through the lens of some of the pretty radical interpretations of the Quran that are out there.
Well, the organization is American Islamic Forum for Democracy. The book is called A Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim Patriot's Fight to Save His Faith. We've had Mr. Zuhdi Jasser on with us, and we appreciate that very much. Let's get which is the best website for folks to go to?
For the book, you can get it from any book retailer, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, or their local bookstores. My website for our organization is aifdemocracy.org. And for the book, there's a website, a new website, battleforthesoulofislam.com.
Zuhdi, we appreciate you being on with us very much. It was very informative, and I enjoyed it. We'd love to have you back on at your convenience, my friend.
Anytime, my friend. Thank you, and God bless.
God bless. We'll be back after this break.